Hey guys! In my last video, I built the structure for my new lathe stand. Now it's time to finish it up with some drawers, some drawer faces, and some cabinet type doors. Check it out. These big pieces of black walnut are going to be drawer faces and cabinet doors. First, I have to cut them to rough length, square them on the joiner, flatten them on the planer, then use the bandsaw to resaw them and make book-matched panels. They weren't quite wide enough from the start, so I had to rip strips off the extra pieces and add them to the panels. I need to batch out 10 drawers, 4 shallow ones and 6 deep ones. Rather than explain the simple and monotonous process of making 10 boxes, enjoy this montage. After the glue dries, I run the walnut panels through the drum sander to make them smooth and flat. I needed to do this now because I have to know the final thickness of these before I can start installing the drawer hardware. Now, in order to make installing these drawers a little easier, I made a few little simple jigs that'll help me out a lot. The first one is this, just a scrap piece of 1/2-inch plywood, but this piece is actually a scrap from one of the face plates that I'm going to have on the front of these before I'm done. And because I want those face plates to be flush with the front of this box, glued it to this. Now I can put that up against that face plate, or up against that frame, and then I can take my drawer slides and just butt them up against it, and then when they're tightened in, I have exactly the right amount of space in there that I need. The other things that I made were a skinny strip and a thicker strip to space out these drawer slides. So the skinny one's going to go down first. I'm going to put a slide on top of that. Then I'm going to have the bigger spacer, and I'll just keep stacking up these slides until I get to the top. The top one is going to be different because those are skinnier drawers, but my plan here is I want 4 skinny drawers across the top, 3 big drawers on the bottom on the left and right compartments, but in the middle I'm going to have cabinet type doors that swing open. And because of that, there's going to be nothing in the middle to stack up to the top. So in order to keep those top 4 drawers spaced correctly, I'm going to reference off of the top for the top drawers instead of off of the bottom. So now with the slides mounted to the cabinet, I can take and reinstall the part of the slide that mounts to the drawer itself. And then what I'll do, holding those out just a little bit, I'll take my spacers again, set those down on the base, and then I can take my drawer and put it in there and slide it down on those spacers so now it's spaced up off the bottom the correct amount. Now because I want the slides to be absolutely flush with the front of the drawer, I'm going to take this board, clamp that to the box. That way, this corner and this corner are pushed absolutely up against this, and then I can pull those slides out to touch them against that straight edge. And I can put a clamp on there to be sure that it's not going to move anywhere, and then making sure that it's still flat on those spacers. I can pull it out a little. Nope. Drop that screw. And I can start to tighten the screws in the front to the drawer. Now it moves nice and smooth. It's got a positive stop where it kind of locks in. And you can see this is about the same thickness as the faces that I've got going on here, and you can see it just lines up perfectly with each edge of that. we go. We've got all 10 drawers put in, and now you can kind of see the layout of this thing. These two open spaces are going to end up being cupboard type doors that open up, and there'll be some shelves in there, whatever miscellaneous storage. So now we can go about cutting up those walnut panels and start setting up the drawer faces and getting them cut to fit perfectly in between wise and height wise. The top of the bench prevented me from using clamps to hold the faceplate in place on the shallow drawers, so I used some CA glue to hold it just enough to position it, carefully pull the drawer out, and clamp it without any movement. Then I could put screws in just like the other drawers. I used the same spacer jig to position some temporary stop blocks for the doors. It's a good thing I didn't glue the back panel on the base in part 1, because I don't know how I would have accurately mounted these hinges without accessing the space through the back. With the door clamped against the stop blocks, I pushed the hinges into the corner and marked out the hole locations. I drilled pilot holes in the cabinet, being careful not to go all the way through. And with the depth stop on the drill press set just shy of the table, I drilled pilot holes in the doors as well. I made these softer door stops by putting a small piece of felt on some blocks of black walnut. I mounted them to the cabinet using the big stop blocks as spacers. Once they were in place, I could knock out the ugly temporary blocks. So, a lathe bench absolutely has to be very rigid, very sturdy. You don't want it vibrating and walking all over when you have a big, heavy thing spinning at a high RPM in your lathe. But that being said, I also want mine to be semi-mobile. It's going to be in a spot where it's probably not going to move more than once a year, but in that one time a year I wanted it to be on wheels to make it easier to move. The problem is with just regular casters, it still is going to get that shimmy and shake that you just don't want in a lathe stand. So I did a bunch of research and finally found these little beauties. This is a leveling caster. Basically what it is a regular caster with a littler wheel on it, and when you want it to be more of a permanent style bench, you just rotate this wheel here and this rubber plunger will go up and down. So you can rotate it and lift it off the wheel and suddenly it becomes solid, and then when you need to move your bench you just rotate it again until the wheel drops back down, and then you can roll your bench away. So I had a hard time finding these because I didn't know what they were called, so I'll leave a link in the description for the ones that I bought, just in case you wanted to look into them yourselves. I enlisted the help of a friend to stop over and help me lift the bench to the floor. Then I bolted my new lathe to the bench top and leveled out the feet on the leveling casters. This made a huge improvement over just resting on the wheels, but there was still a little wobble that I wanted to take out. I ended up putting a trim piece on the back side of the bench top to fill the gap between the top and the wall. With this trim piece, I was able to screw the bench to the wall, and now it is rock solid. I used this shelf pin jig to drill some evenly spaced holes inside the cabinet portion of the bench in order to make some adjustable shelving. I wish I had done this before I mounted the doors, because I ended up having to take them back off to get the jig in place. But after all of my careful marking and measuring, it was really easy to get the doors right back to where they started. Well, I really love the way this thing turned out. It's a whole lot nicer than it really needs to be for a piece of shop furniture, but in the building process I just wanted to try a few things that I'd never done before, and it just turned out great. The only thing I have left to do to the bench itself is to turn a bunch of different knobs. I've got one done already, and I've got a piece of spalted maple chucked up, so I'm going to just turn a bunch of those off camera to finish this thing up. But I just wanted to go over a few of the features about this to explain why I did some of the things that I did. First of all, the reason that all of these are flush mounted to the frame and such tight tolerances between each drawer and each cupboard door is for dust. Lathes make up so much dust and it all falls to the ground, and I just didn't want to fill up my drawers and doors with dust. So this was the best way I could think of, was to minimize the ability for dust to get in there. That's also why I did the overhang on the bench top, so that it comes out way over the drawers and all the dust is going to have a tendency to fall past as opposed to fall down and back. Structurally, I did double plywood on the side, the middle, and the other side because the weight of the lathe is going to be right on top of that. You've got the heaviest part of the lathe on a double, you've got the middle of the lathe on a double, and if I ever get the bed extension, it's going to go over here, and the outside end is going to be on a double. So it should be extra strong, plenty good enough to hold up the weight of the lathe and anything that I could possibly put on it. With that trim piece in the back bolted to the wall, it's not going anywhere. You know, I can shake my whole shop before I can shake the bench alone. So there it is. My new lathe has a new home, and I'm going to be starting to do a couple more turning videos than I've done in the past. Also, after I get a little bit more time in on the machine, I'll probably do a full review of this, because enough of you have actually said that you think that would be a great idea and you've already been considering this one. So I'm going to try to go through the details of why I picked this one over the other options and what I like about it and what I might not like about it. At this point, it's all love, but who knows what happens after I get a couple hours in on it. So anyway, thanks for checking it out, and I'm going to go turn some knobs.